The long war between humans and the alien world of Alara finally ended after many years of fear and fighting. The peace agreement was signed in a wide hall built between the two worlds. The air smelled of new metal and strange flowers that grew only on Alara's soil. Thousands of people gathered to see the ceremony. Some looked happy that the war was over. Others still carried pain inside their hearts. Among the crowd stood one man who had done more than anyone to bring peace, the human soldier named Ethan. Ethan was not tall or proud like other heroes. His uniform was old, the edges of his sleeves burned by time and sand. He had no medals hanging on his chest because he gave them away to the families of soldiers who never came home. What made him special was not strength but something quiet inside him. The way he looked at others with calm eyes. The way he believed peace could come even after the darkest storms. When the war ended, both sides agreed that Ethan should be honored with one wish, a single reward of his choice. The day of the ceremony came under a soft golden sky. The leaders of both worlds sat together, their faces careful and polite. Gifts were prepared, silver treasures, tall ships, new homes, even the right to rule a city if he asked for it. The crowd waited for Ethan's choice. People whispered, guessing what a hero might want after all he had done. When the leader of the human council stood and said, "Ethan of Earth, name your reward," the hall became silent. Everyone's eyes turned to him. Ethan looked down for a moment as if thinking of all the names of the people he had lost. Then he raised his head slowly and said in a quiet voice, "I want to meet the alien princess they keep hidden, the one everyone calls the ugliest." The words fell like stones into still water. No one moved. The alien council looked shocked. Some whispered among themselves in their soft musical language. Even the human officers were confused. The leader repeated his words to make sure he had heard correctly, and Ethan simply nodded. The alien queen sitting at the end of the hall frowned slightly. "You mean Lyra?" she asked. Her voice carried sadness, maybe even guilt. "She is not like the others. She is not meant to be seen." Ethan smiled gently. "Then she has been unseen for too long." The hall filled with quiet murmurs. No one understood why a decorated soldier would choose to see the one alien everyone avoided. People said the princess's skin was strange, her eyes dull, her voice broken. Some even said she was a mistake of birth. But Ethan's face showed no doubt or shame. He stood still, his hands at his sides, waiting patiently as the leaders exchanged nervous glances. At last, the queen nodded to her guards. "Bring her," she said softly. The doors at the end of the hall opened with a slow hiss. From the shadows stepped a figure wearing a long silver cloak with a hood pulled low. Her movements were small and careful, like she was afraid to take up too much space. The crowd watched in silence as she walked toward the center of the hall. When she stopped before Ethan, she kept her head down. Only her hands could be seen, trembling slightly as she held them together. Ethan took a step forward. Everyone expected him to stare or to step back, but instead he bowed. It was a simple bow, not deep, not dramatic, but full of respect. The princess lifted her head a little, surprised. Through the dim light, Ethan could see part of her face. Her skin was not smooth like the others of her kind. It shimmered in uneven colors, patches of pale silver and blue. A small scar ran across one side of her cheek. Her eyes were large but full of sadness, like someone who had spent her life behind closed doors. Ethan said softly, "Thank you for coming, Princess Lyra." The guards and council members looked uneasy. No one had called her princess in a long time. Lyra's lips parted slightly. She whispered, Why would you ask for me?" Ethan's answer was simple, "Because no one else would." Those few words changed the air in the hall. It felt lighter, as if something hidden had been touched by kindness for the first time. Lyra blinked as if she could not believe what she heard. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her cloak, unsure how to respond. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Around them, the crowd stayed silent too, not knowing how to react. The queen looked at Ethan carefully. "You may spend one day with her. After that, you must make your final choice for your reward." Ethan nodded. "One day will be enough." He offered his hand to Lyra. She hesitated, then placed her delicate hand in his. Her skin felt cold, almost like glass, and he held it gently as they walked out of the hall together. No one followed. Behind them, whispers rose again, some mocking, some curious, some touched by what they had seen. Outside the hall, the light of the alien sun fell across the garden. Strange plants glowed softly in shades of green and gold. A small fountain whispered in a language made of water and wind. Lyra stopped near a tree and pulled her hood lower. "You don't have to look at me," she said quietly. Ethan sat on a stone bench and smiled. "But I want to. I don't see what others see. I only see someone who looks lonely." Lyra looked at him, unsure if he was joking. "You speak strange words for a soldier," she said. "Maybe," Ethan replied. "But war makes people forget how to see with their hearts." For the first time, Lyra's eyes softened. She sat beside him, still keeping her hood on. They talked about simple things: the color of the sky, the sound of the wind, how different their worlds smelled. Ethan told her that on Earth the rain had a scent called petrichor, a mix of soil and peace after storm. She said that on her world, they could taste the air after lightning. The conversation was small, but something gentle grew between them, a calmness neither had felt in years. When the twin moons rose, their light touched Lyra's face through the thin cloth of her hood. For a second, Ethan thought he saw her skin shimmer in a way that looked almost beautiful, like stars trapped under her skin. But when she noticed his gaze, she quickly turned away. "You should not stare," she whispered. "It makes people afraid." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "It doesn't make me afraid." Lyra looked at him, puzzled. "Then what does it make you feel?" He smiled softly. "Like I've just seen the beginning of something good." That night they stayed in the garden until the moons reached the edge of the sky. Lyra said little, but she watched him when he wasn't looking. The soldier who could have chosen anything, power, wealth, glory, had chosen to spend his day with her. And for the first time in her life, she wondered if being seen might not be a curse after all. As the wind passed through the glowing trees, Ethan thought that peace might not come from victory or treaties, but from moments like this, one person choosing to see another without fear. The next morning, soft light passed through the tall glass walls of the guest chamber where Ethan stayed. He woke early, his mind still full of the quiet moment in the garden. The image of Lyra's face under the twin moons stayed with him. There had been sadness in her eyes, but also something gentle, almost like a hope that had been buried for a long time. A guard from the royal court came to his door and said the queen had granted him permission to see the princess again for the rest of the day. Ethan thanked the guard and followed the long hall that led toward the hidden garden where he had met her. The halls were silent, filled with soft blue light. Every step echoed like a small memory. Lyra was already there, sitting near the fountain. She did not wear her hood today. The sunlight touched her uneven skin, showing faint colors of silver, pale blue, and soft green. She looked shy but peaceful. When she saw Ethan, she stood up quickly, as if surprised that he had come back. "You came again," she said in a small voice. Ethan smiled. "You said you liked the garden. I thought we could talk here again." She nodded slowly and sat back down. He joined her on the stone bench. For a while, neither spoke. The water in the fountain made a soft sound like a song without words. Lyra finally asked, "Why do you not fear me?" Ethan looked at her calmly. "Because there is nothing to fear. You are not a monster, Lyra." She lowered her head. "That is not what others say. They say I am broken. My form is wrong. They call me the Hidden One." Ethan shook his head. "On my world, many people look different. Some are tall, some small, some have scars or marks. But difference does not mean wrong." Lyra listened quietly. "On my world, perfection is everything," she said. "Those who are not perfect must stay away from the eyes of the people. My family thought they were protecting me, but they also hid me from life." Her voice trembled a little, but she did not cry. Ethan waited until she lifted her eyes again. "Do you want to see the outside of this place?" he asked. "The markets, the streets?" Lyra blinked, surprised. "I have never been allowed to walk there." "Then come with me," Ethan said softly. "If anyone asks, tell them you walk with a human friend." At first she was afraid. The idea of being seen made her hands shake. But when Ethan stood and offered his hand, she slowly reached out. The moment their fingers touched, something faint glimmered under her skin. It was like a pulse of light that disappeared almost at once. Ethan noticed it but said nothing. They walked together through the palace gates. The guards did not stop them. Ethan carried the mark of peace, a small badge that allowed him to move freely. The city outside was alive with color. Tall buildings curved like shells, glowing softly in the sunlight. Floating carts moved through the streets. and children played with small silver spheres that danced in the air. People stopped to look at them, the human soldier and the strange princess with uneven colors on her skin. Some whispered. Others stared openly. Lyra wanted to hide her face, but Ethan kept walking beside her, calm and steady. He smiled at the children and greeted the sellers in their markets. Slowly, the curious looks began to fade. The crowd saw that the human treated her kindly, and their fear softened into quiet wonder. Lyra looked at him as they walked. "Do you always smile when people stare at you?" she asked. Ethan chuckled softly. "If I frown, they'll think I'm angry. Smiling reminds them I mean no harm." She thought for a moment and then tried to smile too. It looked small and uncertain, but Ethan noticed. "That's good," he said. "You should do that more often." They reached a small tea shop near the edge of the city. The owner, an old alien with kind eyes, greeted them and brought 2 cups of glowing drink that smelled of fruit and rain. Lyra took a careful sip. "It's sweet," she said in surprise. "I have never had this before." Ethan laughed lightly. "Then today is special." They talked for a long time. Lyra told him about her childhood, how she watched the stars from her room, how she dreamed of flying beyond her planet, how she made small music boxes to feel less lonely. Ethan listened to every word. When she stopped, he told her about Earth, about green forests and oceans, about people who worked hard just to make life a little better for each other. She listened with wide eyes, amazed that such a world existed where beauty did not mean perfection. As the afternoon passed, Lyra began to change in small ways. Her shoulders no longer curved inward. Her voice grew stronger, more confident. She even laughed once when Ethan told her about a friend who once tried to fix a flying drone with tape. Her laughter was soft, but it carried a clear tone that made nearby flowers open slightly, as if the sound itself gave life. When they returned to the garden, the sky had turned orange. Lyra looked tired but happy. "I never thought I would walk outside like this," she said. "You belong out there," Ethan replied gently. "The world needs to see you." She looked down at her hands. The light beneath her skin appeared again, brighter this time. "Sometimes," she whispered, "I feel like something inside me is waking up." Ethan watched the faint glow fade. "Maybe it's your spirit," he said with a smile. "Maybe it was just waiting for someone to remind it that it matters." Lyra felt her chest grow warm. "No one ever said that to me before." He looked toward the setting suns. "Then it's time someone did." They sat quietly as the sky turned from orange to deep violet. The twin moons rose again, painting silver light across the fountain. Lyra's reflection shimmered in the water. For the first time, she did not turn away from it. She touched the surface gently, watching the ripples dance. "Ethan," she said softly, "do humans believe in destiny?" "Some do," he replied. "But I think destiny is what happens when we choose kindness even when no one expects it." She looked at him with thoughtful eyes. "Then maybe meeting you is my destiny." He smiled but said nothing. The moment was quiet, full of peace. A soft wind passed through the garden, and the glowing leaves rustled like whispers. Later that night, Lyra returned to her chamber. When she looked in the mirror, she noticed something new. The uneven shades on her skin were softer, the colors blending more gently. The mark on her cheek looked almost like light instead of a scar. She touched it with her fingers and felt warmth beneath her skin. She did not understand it, but it felt right, like her true self was slowly waking after a long sleep. In another part of the palace, Ethan stood by his window, looking at the stars. He did not know why he felt drawn to her, only that her loneliness reminded him of every forgotten soldier he had ever known. People who wanted to be seen, not for what they had lost, but for what they still carried inside. He whispered a quiet promise to himself. "Tomorrow, I will show her that she is more than what others see." Far above the planet, the stars shone brighter than usual that night, as if they too were watching something important begin. The morning sun touched the pale towers of the alien city, turning them soft gold. Ethan stood on the terrace of his guest room watching the world come alive. Birds with crystal wings glided between the sky bridges, and faint music drifted from far below. It was peaceful, more peaceful than any battlefield or human camp he had ever known. Yet in the middle of that calm, his thoughts were not of victory or rest. They were of Lyra. He still remembered her laugh from the day before. It had been small, almost shy, but real. He had seen something in her eyes that felt like light breaking through clouds. He didn't know how or why, but he felt his presence was helping her find something she had lost. Maybe faith in herself. Maybe something even deeper. When he walked to the garden again, Lyra was already waiting. She stood near the fountain, wearing a dress the color of morning mist. The uneven shades on her skin seemed softer today, as if the light around her had changed. When she saw Ethan, a smile touched her lips. "You came again?" she said softly. Ethan smiled back. "I told you I would." She looked down shyly. "I thought maybe you would grow tired of me." "I don't get tired of people who tell the truth," he replied. Lyra looked puzzled. "The truth?" "Yes," he said gently. "You never pretend to be someone else. That's rare." Her cheeks glowed faintly like a quiet sunrise beneath her skin. No one ever said that before. Ethan walked beside her along the path lined with silver trees. "You know," he said, "on my world there is a saying, the moon doesn't hide its scars. It shines with them." Lyra touched her cheek where the mark still faintly showed. "You mean beauty can have flaws?" He nodded. "Maybe that's what makes it real." For a moment she was silent. Then she said, "You speak like someone who carries pain but hides it with calm." Ethan smiled gently. "Maybe I do, but it helps to talk to someone who understands." They stopped near the fountain again. The water reflected the twin suns, making soft ripples of gold and blue. Lyra watched the light and said quietly, "When I was a child, I wanted to touch the stars, but the palace walls were too high. I used to dream that I had wings made of glass." Ethan listened carefully. "Why didn't you tell anyone your dream?" She gave a small, sad smile. "Because dreams are not allowed for those who are imperfect." Ethan looked at her seriously. "Then whoever said that was wrong." Her eyes widened slightly. "Wrong?" "Yes," he said. "Dreams belong to everyone. You have a right to yours." For a moment she didn't speak. Then very slowly she whispered, "When you talk, I feel like the air around me becomes lighter." "It doesn't hurt to breathe." Ethan didn't know what to say. He only smiled again, quietly. Around them the garden felt alive. The leaves swayed though there was no wind. The fountain's water shimmered brighter. Something unseen, gentle and pure moved between them. Later, as they walked through the outer halls of the palace, servants bowed politely but watched them in silence. Some looked confused to see Lyra walking beside the human so freely. Others looked amazed at how she had changed. Even her steps were different now, slower, more graceful, like someone learning to trust her own feet. They reached a high balcony that looked over the wide plains of Alara. The light from the twin suns painted the horizon in soft colors. Lyra leaned on the railing, her eyes following the sky. "Do humans ever fear being alone?" she asked suddenly. "All the time," Ethan said. "Even strong people feel that. But sometimes being alone helps you learn who you are." She nodded slowly. "I have been alone most of my life, but I never learned who I am." Ethan looked at her for a long time before answering. "Then maybe now is when you start." The wind carried their words into the distance. Below them, the plains shone like a sea of silver grass. Lyra lifted her hand slightly, and to Ethan's surprise, small motes of light rose from her fingertips and drifted into the air like dust from a dream. She looked at her hand, startled. "I didn't mean to," she said quickly. "It just happened." Ethan looked at her hand in wonder. "It's beautiful." "What is it?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Sometimes when I feel calm or happy, it happens. But I was told never to let anyone see. They said it would frighten people." Ethan watched the lights fade slowly. "It doesn't frighten me. It looks like your heart is showing itself." Lyra turned toward him. "You always say strange things, Ethan. Maybe strange things are what you need to hear." Her laughter came softly again. The air around them felt warm, almost glowing. The faint marks on her skin shimmered brighter, like silver veins filled with light. That evening, they walked back to the garden. The moons were rising, pale and round. Lyra stopped by the fountain and said, "Ethan, can I ask something?" "Of course," he said. "When humans see something they don't understand, what do?" He thought for a moment. "Sometimes they're afraid. Sometimes they're curious. But the best ones try to understand before judging." Lyra looked into the water. "If I told you something that sounds impossible, would you believe me?" He smiled. "I'd listen first. Belief comes after listening." She took a deep breath. "I think there is something inside me that changes when someone is kind to me. It's like a lock opens. When you first spoke to me, I felt it and a small warmth. And now it grows stronger each day. I don't understand what it means." Ethan nodded slowly. Maybe it means your real self is coming out. Kindness can do that. Lyra looked at him for a long time. Her eyes glowed faintly under the moonlight. Do you really think there is nothing wrong with me? He met her gaze. There never was. The words hung in the air like a gentle truth. The garden lights flickered softly. The wind carried the sound of distant chimes. Lyra felt tears forming in her eyes, not from sadness but from relief. For the first time she felt seen, not as the hidden one, not as a mistake, but as herself. Ethan reached out and touched the edge of her sleeve. You don't need to hide anymore, he said quietly. Lyra whispered, Then maybe tomorrow I will not wear this cloak. He smiled. I'd like that. As the night deepened, they sat beside the fountain again, speaking little but feeling everything. The moons reflected in the water, forming two bright circles side by side. One gold, one silver. Lyra looked at them and said softly, Do you think peace can last forever? Ethan looked at the reflection too. Maybe not forever, but it can last as long as we keep choosing it. Lyra nodded. Then I will choose it. Before they left, Lyra looked at her reflection once more. Her uneven colors were fading. Her skin now shone softly, smooth and bright like gentle light on still water. She touched her cheek, amazed. It's changing, she whispered. Ethan watched quietly. Then let it. Maybe it's what you were always meant to be. That night, when she lay in her room, Lyra couldn't sleep. She felt warmth inside her body, gentle and alive. The walls seemed to glow faintly. In the mirror, her eyes shone brighter than ever. She realized the glow came not from the moons outside, but from within her. A light that had been locked away for years, now finally free. And somewhere across the palace, Ethan sat awake by his window, thinking of the same thing, that sometimes the greatest change in the universe begins not with power, but with kindness. The next morning began with light brighter than usual. The twin suns rose over Ilara, casting golden colors across the palace walls. Everything looked calm, but something new was happening inside those halls. Servants whispered as they passed through the corridors. Guards exchanged uncertain looks. Word was spreading quickly, and the hidden princess was changing. Lyra stood in front of her mirror holding her breath. The image staring back at her was not the same as before. The uneven shades that once covered her skin were almost gone. Her scars had faded into faint lines of light. Her eyes, once dull and gray, now shone softly like polished amber. She touched her cheek gently, afraid it might be an illusion, but the warmth under her skin was real. It pulsed like a living glow, steady and peaceful. She remembered Ethan's words from the night before. Maybe it's what you were always meant to be. His voice echoed in her mind and filled her with quiet strength. She decided not to wear her hood that day. For the first time in her life, she wanted the world to see her as she truly was. When she walked through the garden, the guards at the gate turned in surprise. Some lowered their heads respectfully, unsure if they were even looking at the same princess they once pitied. The faint silver marks on her arms shimmered like sunlight through water. She did not hide them. She walked with calm steps, her face open to the wind. Ethan arrived soon after. The moment he saw her, he stopped. For a heartbeat, he said nothing. He had thought she was already beautiful in her quiet way. But now she seemed like a piece of the sky had taken human form, yet her expression was still the same. Gentle, unsure, human in feeling. You weren't wearing your cloak? He said softly. I don't need it anymore, she replied. You were right. I don't want to hide. Ethan smiled, but inside he worried what others might say. He knew the palace council would not ignore such a change. They will notice you, he said. Are you ready for that? Lyra took a deep breath. I think I am. Hiding didn't protect me. Maybe being seen will. Her words carried courage he had not heard before. Together they walked through the main hall. People stared as they passed. Some bowed. Some whispered in confusion. But no one mocked her now. The light that followed her seemed to silence unkind thoughts before they could form. Before long, the royal court summoned Ethan. The message came quickly. The queen requests your presence. He followed the guards to the tall silver doors that led into the council chamber. Inside, the queen sat upon her high seat, her face calm but tense. The council members stood in a circle around her, their long robes trailing across the floor like moving shadows. Ethan of Earth, the queen said, we must speak. He bowed respectfully. Of course, your majesty. She looked at him closely. You have spent time with my daughter, the one we kept hidden. Since you arrived, she has begun to change. Her appearance, her light, and even her spirit. We do not understand it. Ethan listened quietly. The Queen's tone was not angry, only uncertain. We fear, she continued, that this change may not be safe. There are old stories of power sealed inside our bloodline. If awakened too soon, it can bring danger. Tell me, human, what have you done? Ethan took a slow breath. Nothing, Your Majesty. I only treated her with kindness. A murmur ran through the council. One elder shook his head. Impossible. No human has such power. Ethan met their eyes calmly. Then maybe it's not power. Maybe it's what happens when someone stops being afraid. The Queen looked at him for a long moment. You believe this is caused by her heart, not by any gift? Yes, Ethan said. She was never broken. She just needed someone to see her for who she is. The Queen sighed. You speak with courage, soldier. But courage is not always safe. She paused, then added gently, Still I see truth in your words. For the first time in years, my daughter smiles. Ethan bowed again. If that is true, then I am glad. The Queen's eyes softened. But understand this, our people may not accept her change so easily. Some will fear what they cannot explain. We must be careful. I understand, Ethan said. But please don't make her hide again. She has waited too long. The Queen nodded slowly. We will see. When he left the chamber, Lyra was waiting outside the door. Her face was pale with worry. What did they say? She asked. They're afraid, he said honestly, but not of you and of what they don't understand. She looked down. Then maybe I will always frighten them. No, Ethan said softly. You will teach them. She looked up at him and a faint smile touched her lips. You always believe in me. I will keep doing that, he replied. That evening, a quiet event was held in the main courtyard, a small dinner to celebrate the peace treaty's third day. Both humans and aliens attended. Lanterns floated in the air, glowing like gentle stars. Music from both worlds mixed into a single melody. Lyra walked beside Ethan, unhooded, her light faint but visible. When the guests saw her, they gasped. But no one turned away. Her glow was not harsh. It was soft, peaceful, almost healing. Even the children reached out their hands toward her light, laughing when it danced on their fingers. Lyra smiled at them, her heart full of wonder. Ethan stood beside her, quietly proud. He noticed that even the Queen watched from her seat with eyes that shone not with fear, but with tears. The world was changing little by little under the glow of her daughter's courage. Later that night, after the guests left, Lyra and Ethan returned to the garden. The fountain glowed brighter than ever, reflecting her light. She looked at her hands, amazed. It feels strange, she said. It's like my heart is shining outside my body. Ethan smiled gently. Then it means your heart is free. Lyra turned toward him. Do you ever miss your world? Every day, he said softly. But being here feels like the reason I came. She looked at him with quiet gratitude. When I met you, I thought you chose me out of pity. But now I think you saw something I didn't see in myself. He nodded. Maybe. Or maybe I just saw what was waiting to be found. The night breeze passed through the garden carrying the scent of glowing flowers. The moons rose together, painting their faces in silver light. Lyra stepped closer to the fountain, her reflection shining with perfect clarity. No scars, no fear, only peace. She whispered, Ethan, do you think I am truly changing? He looked at her, his eyes kind. No, Lyra, you're not changing. You're returning to who you always were. She smiled, and her light grew brighter, casting a gentle glow over the garden. For a moment, it felt as if the stars themselves bowed to her. In that glow, Ethan felt warmth in his heart, the quiet understanding that sometimes the most beautiful things in the universe are not created, but revealed through kindness. Far above, the twin moons shone side by side, their light meeting on the fountain's surface. And in that peaceful reflection, two worlds that had once fought began to see each other differently, not as enemies, but as people who could heal together. The palace of Alara felt different now. Where once there was silence and fear, there was now calm light and quiet hope. People spoke softly about the human soldier and the princess who no longer hid. The story spread through the city like sunlight through clouds. Children drew her image in glowing dust on the streets. Traders told stories about her gentle voice and kind eyes. And deep in the garden where everything had begun, Lyra and Ethan still met each day as if time itself paused there. One morning, Lyra walked to the garden before sunrise. The sky was soft and gray, the air cool and still. She stood near the fountain and looked at her reflection. Her light was brighter than before, not blinding but peaceful. The marks on her arms now formed gentle shapes like flowing rivers. She touched the water's surface and the ripples turned golden. She did not fear her glow anymore. She accepted it as part of her life, like breath or heartbeat. Ethan arrived quietly, carrying a small piece of folded cloth. "I brought you something," he said. Lyra turned with a soft smile. "You always bring something." He opened the cloth and showed her a small pendant shaped like half a moon. "It's from my world," he said. "It belonged to my mother. She said it was made from the first metal that fell from the sky." Lyra touched it carefully. "It's beautiful." "I want you to have it," Ethan said. "It reminds me that even broken pieces of the moon can shine." Her eyes softened. "Thank you. Then I will keep it always." They sat together near the fountain. For a while they said nothing. The sound of the water was enough. Then Lyra spoke quietly. "Ethan, I think I finally understand what is happening to me." He looked at her. "What do you mean?" She placed her hand over her heart. "All my life they told me my form was a mistake, that I carried something dangerous. But it was never danger. It was light. My ancestors sealed it long ago, so no one could use it for pride or war. It could only awaken when someone saw me as more than what I appeared to be. You did that." Ethan listened, his face calm but full of emotion. So it wasn't magic or power. It was truth. "Yes," Lyra said softly. "The truth that kindness is stronger than fear." Her eyes glowed faintly as she spoke. The air around them shimmered and the garden began to hum like a quiet song. Flowers that had been closed for years slowly opened, their petals glowing with silver light. The fountain rose higher, sending a soft mist across the air. Ethan felt warmth on his skin but no pain and only peace. Lyra looked around amazed. "It's like the world is breathing again." Ethan smiled. "Maybe it was waiting for you." As the morning brightened, the queen came to the garden. She walked slowly, her eyes full of wonder. The guard stayed behind her, silent and still. When she saw her daughter, she stopped. "Lyra," she whispered, "you shine like the dawn." Lyra turned to her mother, her expression calm. "I am not afraid anymore, Mother." The queen's eyes filled with tears. "I see that now. I was wrong to hide you. I thought I was protecting you from pain, but I only gave you loneliness. Will you forgive me?" Lyra stepped forward and took her mother's hands. "You do not need to ask. I never hated you. I only wished you could see me." The queen held her close. The glow from Lyra's body spread around them both, like soft golden light wrapping two hearts together. When they stepped apart, the queen looked at Ethan. "Human," she said gently. "You came here as a soldier and brought peace without a single weapon. Our people will not forget," Ethan bowed. "Your Majesty, I only gave her what she already deserved, respect." The queen nodded. "And that is more powerful than any victory." Days passed and peace between the two worlds grew stronger. The people of Alara no longer spoke of Lyra as the hidden princess. They called her the Light of Dawn. Her story reached even the far colonies, teaching that beauty and kindness could live in the same heart. Ethan often stood beside her in public gatherings, quiet and humble as always. When asked what reward he had chosen, he only said, "I already received it." But soon the time came for Ethan to return to Earth. The treaty required the human envoys to go back once peace was confirmed. The ship that would take him home stood ready in the main hangar. Lyra came to see him off. She wore a white robe that shimmered faintly in the light. Around her neck hung the small moon pendant he had given her. They walked together to the landing field. The sky above was filled with streaks of gold and blue. Wind carried the sound of distant bells. Neither of them spoke at first. At last Lyra said, "Will you ever come back?" Ethan looked at her gently. "If the stars allow it, yes." Lyra nodded slowly. "Then I will wait. Not in sadness, but in hope," he smiled. "Then I will carry that hope with me." She reached out her hand. "Take this," she said, placing a small crystal into his palm. "It is a part of my light. It will glow only in the presence of truth. When it shines, you will know you are not alone." Ethan closed his fingers around it. "I'll keep it safe." The air shimmered as the ship prepared to rise. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes full of quiet strength. "Ethan, when I first met you, I thought you had come to look at a broken thing. But now I know you came to remind me I was whole." He smiled, his voice soft. "And you reminded me what peace really means." As the ship doors opened, a warm breeze passed between them. The glow from Lyra's body touched the metal steps, leaving trails of soft light. Ethan turned to look at her one last time. "Goodbye, Princess," she smiled. "No, not goodbye. Until we meet again." He nodded and walked up the steps. The ship rose slowly, leaving the ground in a swirl of silver dust. Lyra stood watching as it climbed higher and higher, until it became a small star against the bright sky. The pendant around her neck glowed faintly, and she touched it with her hand, feeling its warmth. Months later on Earth, Ethan stood on a quiet hill under a wide night sky. The war was over and the cities were rebuilding. He looked at the small crystal in his hand. For a long time it had stayed dark. But that night, as he thought of Lyra, it began to glow softly. The same light he had seen in her eyes spread across his palm. He smiled and whispered her name. Somewhere far beyond the stars in the garden of Ilara, the twin moons shone brighter for a moment. Lyra lifted her face to the sky and felt the glow of her pendant answer his. Across the distance of two worlds, their lights touched, proof that kindness could bridge even the space between stars. And so the story of the human soldier and the once hidden princess became more than history. It became a memory told by both worlds, that the truest reward is not power or beauty, but the courage to see another heart as it truly is.